This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, and welcome to the City of Warrenville Public Works and Infrastructure Committee of the Whole regular meeting. It is Monday, February 12th, 2024. This Committee of the Whole meeting is conducted in the traditional in-person format, and the public can view the meeting virtually using the GoToMeeting access. Public comment will not be allowed during the meeting if you are on the GoToMeeting. So only comments will be made here at the location. So can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Brummel,
Here?
Alderman Lockett,
Here.
Alderman Ashour, absent, Alderman Berry,
Here?
Alderman Davalos,
Here.
Alderman Augustinovich,
Here.
Alderman Wilkie,
Here.
Alderman Widener,
Here.
Alderman Kruckenberg.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now if we would all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I think I shoved that seat right into. Okay, now it's time for citizens' comments. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment at this time? Otherwise, you are welcome to make your comment during one of the items during the business of the meeting, if you have a comment to make during, for that particular item. Okay. See anyone? Officials and staff comments. Mayor?
Thank you. Phil, we have an introduction to make this evening?
Sure. I was going to mention her during my budget presentation, but I'll introduce her now. We have a new employee that started on December 18th as our new asset management analyst. Her name is Cassandra Hernandez-Galvin. She comes from Fermilab, where she worked for 8 years. And we're super excited to have her. She's got a good technology background and is going to be a big asset in helping both public works staff and the city as a whole as we proceed through these various software implementations.
Great. Well, welcome, Cassandra. Glad to have you on board. And you must be special because you got a name tag. It took me 2 years to get a name tag as mayor. The only other thing I have is Mary and I attended a mother-son Olympics at the Park District last week. That was just a delight. Just a shout out to the Park District. They do so many fun things. There were, 40 or 50 mothers and sons there. And they were, I don't think there was one that didn't have a smile on their face the whole time. And then I was there to hand out the awards, and it was just a delight. So shout out to the Park District. Keep up the good work. Keep people happy that they live in Warrenville and give them good things to do. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman? Comments? Nothing? Okay. Administrator? Okay. Treasurer? Very good. Okay. Now on to the business of the meeting. Our first item is the Finance Department FY 2025 budget presentation, which will be presented by our Finance Director, Kevin Dahlstrand.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So we've been delayed a week with this, and I will warn anybody who's not a finance-loving individual, it did not get any more exciting in the last week. There's still a lot of exciting stuff in here, but we didn't add anything to it. So I want to point out that toward the end of last year, end of fiscal 23, since I was up here last, we did notice that we got our 2022 Certificate of Achievement for financial reporting. And we've also submitted the 2023 annual audit for the same award. That award has not been issued yet, but we do expect to hear from that in the next month or two. Another one that's a little more exciting for me. Hold on just a second. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Second item is a little more of a nerdy thing, but I think it's one we find extremely exciting, and it's a good thing that we have this in place. We had another instance of an external fraud attempt on one of the checks that we issued to our vendors. The check was for a little over $25,000. Was intercepted somewhere out in the mail world. The payee was changed on the check. Because of the positive pay security measure we have in place with the bank, it caught this, asked us to make a decision, do we want to pay it or do we not want to pay it? Well, when we went in and reviewed it, we obviously saw that it was not for the payee that it was intended for, and we immediately rejected that. What that means is that we protected the taxpayer assets. That money was returned to the city by the bank. They are in pursuit of the individual committed the fraud, and we've also filed a police report with our police department, who's regularly updating me on their pursuit of who committed that fraud as well. It will take them a while, but they will continue to provide me those updates. As you are aware, at the end of fiscal 2023, at the very end, we did issue the general obligation debt series, which is the first the city's had in many years. It was a little over $10.4 million. It was a very successful issuance, and during the tax during the tax levy discussion this year, we also initiated the initial abatement of the taxes that would go to pay for the debt on that bond. As you know, it's a general obligation debt, but it's our intent to pay all of that with tax increment financing revenue, and it will not appear on people's tax bills. So some important notes, and this really should also say success to it too. As you're aware, we brought in senior accountant Veronica Cavina, and she's been an absolute godsend in our department. She's extremely resourceful, extremely smart, and very good at what she does. We completed her onboarding. It went extremely easy. Her and I have been in an ongoing knowledge transfer. I'm trying to download as much of what I know over the years I've been here and what her predecessors have worked on. I'm trying to make sure she gets up to speed on all of that. That's going to take time, but it's not because she can't absorb it, is there's just too much to offload to her. So we're making a lot of headway with that, and we're doing extremely well. She's also taken on the job of the TAC liaison. She got thrown right in the middle of that, but she absorbed it well, and she's working out extremely well. She seems to have developed a nice rapport with the board, and they're working all very well together. During the year, we promoted Diana Herrera, who most of you would have seen at the front desk answering the phones or when you're walking in to make a payment. She'd be the first one most anybody in town would see. She's been promoted to the accounts payable clerk, and she is absorbing that fairly well. It's a little more detailed than what she was used to in the job she was in before. So there's a little bit of a learning curve here, and I don't mean that in any bad way. There's just a whole lot for her to absorb, and she's come along extremely well with that. And she's starting to get a good handle on how all of that works and the things that she has to look out for. The good thing is she did not have to be trained on two systems as we bailed on the D365 implementation. So she's only doing the Harris MSI right now, and that's been extremely helpful because you don't have to learn the same thing two different ways. On the new ERP, we're working a lot on pre-implementation work. That's the work where we help determine how we want this system to look when it's finally up and in place, the things we want to change, the processes that we want to improve on. One of the things that we will be bringing forward would be a change to monthly billing for our sewer and water bills as opposed to bi-monthly. It'll make things a whole lot easier on our end to bill and a lot easier on the homeowners as well. We've finally have the payroll in place with ADP. Everything is up and running. There are a few things that are still kind of bumpy, but not too bad. They're easily handled by staff, and mostly revolves around leave management. We have one or two things that kind of stand out and make it a little bumpy. But it's an easy workaround, and it works extremely well now, especially with Ferranis, who's got a handle on all of that and moves along extremely well. So our goals and objectives for 2025, we've created a decision package to help reorganize the finance department. Since COVID, we've seen a lot less foot traffic in City Hall than we saw before. One of the things that we are proposing would be to change the front counter position into a halftime position. We would be adding that as a halftime equivalent. We would be converting the accounting clerk one position, which was that position Diana Herrera was in, into a staff accountant. And also then ultimately promoting Ferranis to be the accounting supervisor. And what that would do is allow her to move some of the things that she's doing down to a staff accountant, which then allows me to hand some of the stuff I am doing off to her, and allows me to address a lot of the higher things that I should be working on now, where there's not enough of us to do all the accounting, that I have my hands in way too many things right now. So we want to be able to have me look at some of the higher level things within the department. And then, and it would also relieve me of the day-to-day supervision of the department, which I think would bring a lot of ability for me to look at other things as well. We certainly want to finally implement a new budget process when we get into this new ERP. I know for the last 2 years, I've had to say we're going to do that, but through no fault of mine, we keep having to find new ways to do this every year. The budget for 2025 is sort of a hybrid right now of what we use coming out of D365 and what we did before that, which is my giant Excel spreadsheet that contains all this stuff. We want that to go away. So hopefully I'm not gonna say hopefully, when the new ERP is in place, we'll have a budget process that everyone will be able to input, and will save a lot of work in the finance department as well. We will work on the continued analysis related to the special census. Ours will be more on the back end to a degree when we start analyzing how much revenue we can expect to receive from any new people that are found as part of that census. We are also in a position then to assist with the collective bargaining agreements. There are two that expire at the end of this year and one that expires next year. And while we haven't begun any of the negotiations for that, we are in a position that we will be helping with any of the financial considerations that are involved with that. Again, we want to make sure that the new ERP implementation goes smoothly. It certainly has to go more smoothly than our last one. The next one is a thing of great frustration for me, is we want to be able to do periodic financial updates, which we ought to be able to do much easier than we are now. Right now, they are so labor intensive, we jumped between the two systems, that it's extremely hard to produce in a timely manner. Now, by the time we produce them, they're already outdated. So we want to improve the timing on that, as well as the content that we include in that. And our final thing here is really more a note, is that we want to make sure we get the second abatement of property taxes in place for the next year. That will become an annual thing. I just mentioned that because it is still new to everything we've done in the past. So that's about all I've got. If there's any questions I can answer, I'll be glad to do that.
Questions? Alderman Widener?
Yeah, Kevin, with the new employees that you have in your department, are you adequately funding for any kind of off-property training or conferences that these folks may need to take advantage of?
Yeah, absolutely. If Verona's decides that she wants to proceed and become the accounting supervisor, ultimately, we've budgeted in there for some executive coaching as well as management style training, because she doesn't have a lot of management experience, but we budgeted for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Brummel?
Thank you. Just a note of appreciation for you and for the rest of the staff for your continued and onerous job of getting past the ERP debacle that we've experienced with the company that we had before, the work that you're doing with Baycor. Reading the weekly report, I had to read it twice. There was so much that you're accomplishing with the rest of the staff to get us to a place where everything is organized as we initially wanted it to be, but the company that we hired was not able to do. So I just want to recognize how much extra work has gone in your department and the other departments to make that happen, so thank you for that. Going back to the water tower, $10.4 million general obligation debt, again, just I want to emphasize that that will not appear on anyone's tax bill, because while it's called a general obligation debt, there is a dedicated revenue source to make payments on that debt and pay it off other than the general fund. Is that not correct?
Absolutely correct, Mayor. That was the intent in the beginning, and that's what we intend to follow along.
Very good, thank you.
I do have one comment to make. The issue where you had the accounts payable check with the fraud. I just heard a whole episode about people sending checks through the mail. And this is one of the biggest things right now, that people are stealing checks. And they're recommending that these checks be actually deposited at the post office, not to put them in your mailbox, not to put the little flag up, just so people understand out in the community that you really need to go, and not sometimes even putting the check in the mailbox in front of the post office, but actually going inside to the post office, and to use indelible ink. That's what they're claiming, that this is because everyone has the ability now to wash these checks, and except for your signature, of course. And I think it's something I've heard of several seniors that have gotten caught, because they still like to write checks. They don't trust anything else, but sometimes it's the new ways that do it are the safest ways and not the old ways, which is check writing. So just so our community is aware of that and to be careful.
So my two notes to that, if I might, one is the good thing is our mail leaves here with the postal carrier. We don't actually drop it off at the post office, so it's going directly to them. The other thing we're looking forward to is in the new ERP, we hope to be able to move to doing the vast majority of our payments via ACH, so that we don't actually have to write a physical check. That would make our lives a whole lot easier too.
Great, that'd be great. Okay, any other questions? Mr. Lockett?
30 years, amazing. Are you going to be okay without the Excel, though? I'm kind of worried. I mean, it's kind of like,
It's gonna be a struggle, but
it's a
no,
staple.
Actually, I would
mean,
be very glad to not have to maintain that spreadsheet. I'd like to be able to share some of the work with others in the department, and particularly Verona's, because right now with that spreadsheet, I honestly can't let anybody else into it, because if they change anything anywhere, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I have to be the only one who can change anything, and I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'd like to have anybody else be able to help me with this.
I've kind of heard rumblings that nobody's even probably allowed to look at the screen or go close to the
You
keyboard.
can see the
I
screen,
mean,
sure.
you know,
You can
just
look,
just in case.
just don't touch, but yes.
And then just one quick clarification, even though the front desk is changed to part-time or 0.5 time, there will always be somebody there while City Hall's open, just so everybody
Absolutely,
understands.
there's no change in city hall hours. We would use that part-time person to help, like with lunch periods and that kind of thing. And then the remainder would be covered kind of the way it is now with existing staff.
Okay. And then my story, just real quick on the check thing, it happened to us. Somebody sent us a check to the business, They intercepted it. It ended up in Ohio. Somebody created our business name in Ohio and then went to go cash the check. So we're not trying to scare everybody, but it was crazy because, how do you start a whole nother company, get it off to Ohio? That's crazy. That's insane, but they do it. So just be careful. But thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kevin. Okay, our next item is Public Works Department FY 2025 budget presentation, and that will be done by Public Works Director Phil Kugler.
Good evening. I'm really excited to be here tonight to talk about Public Works' accomplishments from the current fiscal year and our goals for the next fiscal year. You guys really lucked out tonight to have an accountant and an engineer back to back for the budget presentations. Kevin and I always talk about how we're the cool kids among the senior staff and very supportive of each other. Public Works had an extremely busy year this year. We had about $6 million or so of construction projects this year. Luckily, $1.2 million of that was paid for with outside grant funding. So it's a busy year. I'm anticipating a busy year next year too, but a different kind of busy. As I've done the last few years, the first few slides are going to cover the fiscal year 24. I'm going to split up by divisions, and then the last few slides will be our fiscal year 25. So I'm going to start off the utility division for fiscal year 24 and with the sanitary sewer system. I wish years ago when we started the I&I reduction program that I would have thought of this, but the I&I reduction program, while it's required by the city of Naperville with our agreement with them to help reduce the amount of stormwater, the inflow and infiltration going into the sanitary sewer system, it really effectively is our proactive maintenance of our sanitary sewer system. We're in an organized way, we're going through the system, we're evaluating the different components of it, the manholes, the pipes and everything, we're identifying defects, and then we're repairing those defects. It takes place over a period of like 11 to 13 years, and then we're going to start over again and continually go through that. The system will continue to deteriorate. There will be issues to address, and the byproduct is it will reduce I&I. But ultimately, you're going to see a change in how I refer to this going forward. It's going to be our sanitary sewer maintenance program. That's, again, effectively what it is. The water side of the utility division was a little bit busier this year than the sanitary sewer side. The water tower on Country Ridge Drive was painted this year, both the inside and the outside of that. And you may have noticed the tent that went over it, so when they removed the paint, they could keep there was some lead paint there that they were able to then contain and dispose of properly. I think it looks great, much better than it did before. We had contractor line a water main crossing under Route 59 near Burger King last fall. Later this fiscal year, we're going to have a contractor come in and do some leak detection on our water system. And that's to identify leaks that might be occurring in our water system, gives us areas to focus on and be aware of, because those leaks can turn into breaks pretty quickly. And if we can, again, proactively start identifying this stuff and addressing it before it becomes a problem, that'd be better for our staff not having to react in an emergency, and also better for the residents that we serve. The new well construction is pretty exciting. Last summer, the site improvements, which were like the grading of the site, removal of trees and that, were completed, followed by the drilling of the new well in the fall. Staff worked with Engineering Enterprises to monitor the water levels in the nearby private residential wells. I'm not going to dwell on that too much right now because there's an item later on tonight's agenda with information to report on for that. And moving on to street division, they were extremely busy with construction projects. We had our normal annual road program this year, which is funded by the city's capital maintenance replacement fund. The Batavia Road resurfacing project west of 59 to Fermilab was partially funded by federal surface transportation program funds. And then the city's local share of that was funded by the state motor fuel tax funds. Street division staff converted the old unsightly ditch that was along Route 59 by the Tom's Market and Burger King properties into an enclosed storm sewer system. At least for half of that project, you've seen the grass already started to grow last year on the northern part of that. The southern part, we had to wait to restore until after the water main pipelining was complete. But that looks a lot better. It's going to function a lot better and be easier for staff to maintain moving forward. And then the square courts, which are in Summer Lakes, west of Shaw Drive, generally between Continental Drive and Batavia Road. We resurfaced those this year with community development block grant funds administered through DuPage County. And I think those funds covered about half the construction costs in that project. And then the east side storm sewer upgrades on Virginia and Central Avenues were completed this summer as well, and those were funded partially by DuPage County American Rescue Plan Act funds. And the remaining construction project for this fiscal year is this lining of the storm sewers, which council approved a contract for that in the fall or early winter, and then the change order just recently in the last couple of weeks. The contractor is actually ready to start lining those pipes next week, starting on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. The design and property acquisition side of things is also busy. Staff's currently is putting together the bid documents for the 2024 road program. And also the Batavia Road resurfacing project from Warrenville Road to Butterfield Road. The Mack Road Bridge project and trail project is moving along. The property acquisition communications started just after the holidays. Our consultant mailed out the offer letters for the compensation for easements to the residents just after the holidays. That went by certified mail. We know we've got confirmation they received them, and that consultant's then been coordinating and communicating with those residents. The Route 59 sidewalk and path project, you may recall that as we went through preliminary engineering, developed the cost estimates. The cost estimate ended up being a lot higher than we were expecting when we originally applied for grant funding. Staff has since reapplied for grant funding, and I'm confident that we're going to receive a grant with more money this time around. I saw the initial results from what was submitted and evaluated by the DMMC staff. Because we had to reapply for grant funding, that construction project that's going to be off a couple more years into the future. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit here and looking ahead, but what I anticipate for fiscal year 25 is instead of, we're also going to apply for another source of grant funding that could potentially fund a higher percentage of the project than the SDP funding that we're going to be receiving. So that's what we're going to spend time on in fiscal year 25 versus this year we're just wrapping up the preliminary engineering, and I would anticipate then that the final engineering would occur fiscal year 26 or so. So this is my catch-all category of other projects. Public Works staffing, we unfortunately had to hire it was good that we hired two new people, but we had two people leave, so we hired Zach Jardine as our utility maintenance superintendent. He started in late September, and I know he introduced himself at a previous meeting, and as Mayor allowed me to do before the meeting, or the beginning of the meeting, Cassandra Hernandez-Galvin is our new asset management analyst, who started just on December 18th. Our high-speed garage door project is about to get underway. Staff met with the contractor last week, and it's going to take about 2 months or so for the doors to be ordered and delivered. We anticipate that they'll be installing those doors in either April or hopefully by the end of April, but that could bleed over into early May. As everybody's aware, we went through a really significant and detailed software assessment and selection process last year that resulted in contracts with 3 different vendors, and those projects are in various stages of implementation right now. Our tree maintenance and maintenance and planting program that was approved by council in December of 2022. Street Division staff planted the first 100 new parkway trees along Continental Drive between Route 59 and Johnson School in October, and then we're looking forward to the next planting this coming fall. Shifting to fiscal year 25, council recently approved 2 contracts for sanitary sewer system flow monitoring. One is to monitor the flows from the recent new developments in town so we can compare those to what was anticipated when they were going through the design and permitting process. And then the other is to check our progress on the basins where the I&I projects were completed, which is 4 basins where we've done that, lining manholes and such, and other repairs that staff performed, as well as the progress that Fermilab made on their I&I projects in their system. On the water side of things, Mayor almost choked over the $4.2 million water tower project being awarded last week when he read the motion. It's an exciting project. I'm really happy we're finally here. It was a long time coming. I'm anticipating that you probably won't see much action on that site until the weather warms up, and that's going to be a long project. It just takes a lot of time. The completion date on it is August 31st of 2025. So it's going to be all of fiscal year 25 and into fiscal year 26 before that's complete. We've got a decision package, a new decision package in this year's budget for the valve assessment program. And that's going to be a 4-year program where we hire a contractor to come in and exercise and evaluate the water system valves throughout our system. So they'll do a quarter of the system each year for the 4 years. I'm anticipating coming out of that, there's going to be repairs identified and things that staff needs to deal with in terms of repairs. But that will make our water valves much more dependable. So when you know when there's a water main break and we go to shut down that valve, it's going to shut down and close. And then that's something that going forward, we're going to have to continue, just like the sanitary sewer system, the roads and everything else, to continually evaluate that, because again, these things as they age tend to deteriorate. Council recently approved a contract to update the city's water system model, and then also the contract for the design of the water treatment building on Estes for Well 13. And that Well 13 we're anticipating to be out to bid by the end of the year on, and that construction project's probably a 12 to 18-month period when that's done. But that'll be the last major contract to go out to bid for that series of projects for the bonds. And so far, I think we're doing pretty well on those bonds. The water tower was less than we had anticipated for that bond issue. The 2 other projects, the site improvements and the drilling of the well, were also less. So I'm hoping that the water treatment building also continues that trend. That's good news considering how many contracts we've had go out to bid that are significantly higher than we expected on the road side of things recently. Shifting over to street division for fiscal year 25, it's going to be a little bit lighter of a construction, or actually a lot lighter of a construction year. The 2024 road program should go out to bid soon and be constructed this summer. The Batavia Road resurfacing project, again, that'll be out to bid soon, and that we're anticipating summer construction for that. There's one thing I do want to bring into a call to attention for that project is staff is going to be pursuing trying to close Batavia Road completely for a couple of week stretch during that project, so the contractor can efficiently work through and removing the pavement. When they remove the asphalt, the concrete that's underneath has a lot of reinforcement wire, and it's very labor intensive to go through there and cut any of the wires that are sticking up out, and then followed by the asphalt level binder and then the asphalt surface. And we think by doing that, the contractor, it's kind of ripped, like we did with Warrenville Road, going to rip the Band-Aid off. The people on the street will be disturbed for a shorter period of time. They'll have the ability at the end of the day when they're parking on one of the side streets across the road while it's closed, to be able to walk across Batavia Road without having to worry about traffic too when they don't have access to their driveways. And we're confident that's going to be it's going to be a pain in the butt while it's going on, but it's going to be a much shorter period of time for people to be hassled with being out of their driveways and affected by construction. I mentioned the Mack Road Bridge and Trail project earlier. The letting date now that we're scheduled on is September 2024. That's largely dependent on how the property acquisition process goes. So if that is slower, then that letting date will be pushed again. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll work through that process and be able to proceed with that September letting date. Design a property acquisition for fiscal year 25. It's going to be a year from now. I'll be working on the 2025 road program and getting that out to bid. And really, the Mack Road Bridge and Trail is just finalizing the property acquisition and the bid documents for bidding. The fiscal year 25 other projects category is actually larger than normal. The new software implementations take up a lot of that. I'm just going to review some of the terms again, because I know I live this every day. You guys don't always hear this. The Enterprise Resource Planning Software is the ERP, is commonly referred to. The software we chose is BSNA. The contract is signed. We're currently waiting for a schedule from BSNA so we can get started in the implementation with them. As Kevin mentioned in his presentation, finance and community development are spending a lot of time right now, a lot of staff time to clean up data and prepare the information in a way that when the project starts with BSNA, it should be a more efficient exchange of information because it's going to be in the format that they're looking for when they receive it. The Enterprise Asset Management Software, or EAM, is ViewWorks, and that's primarily public works software, although we're tracking the police department fleet in there. There's some other items potentially of the equipment that we might track with the police department in there too. That project the implementation is already underway for that. Supervisory staff in public works has been meeting weekly with Baycor, who's implementing the project, testing and developing the test environment, and now we're actually in the process of switching from the test environment to production. We anticipate a go live probably in early April for that one. Depending on the timing that go live with the next Public Works Committee meeting, I'm anticipating Cassandra is going to be giving a presentation on how that software works and how it looks to City Council. It might be, if we just go live in early April, it'll probably end up being the June Public Works Committee meeting where she'll show that. And then the citizen engagement website and FOIA software is Granicus. And those three pieces of the software are moving along at different speeds. The citizen engagement, they're trying to marry up the implementation of that with the ViewWorks software and BSNA, because there's some connectivity there that needs to happen in order to fully have the residents appreciate how to get the service requests into ViewWorks and that kind of stuff. They're going to be doing it through the citizen engagement software and either an app or on the website. The website is the biggest part of that, the Granicus project, and that's going to take the longest. It's the heaviest lift for staff. It's the heaviest lift for Granicus. And then the FOIA management is coming along too. There's been talking with Alma. There's been meetings, kickoff meetings with Granicus to start this project already. So we've got 3 other decision packages that are on the slide. The GIS management services. We currently have a contract with Cultivate Geospatial Solutions. It was approved by council a couple of months ago now, and we've been working with them on some discovery sessions with staff and trying to figure out what the state of our GIS right now and our data and what we need to do moving forward to support the software solutions. And as I said, when that contract was approved, we're going to approach this on a year-to-year basis. We want to evaluate what scope and work we need from them each year so we can right-size the contract each year instead of just having it be some consistently high contract. After talking with CGS recently, I had originally been thinking it would be a $150,000 contract, but as we narrowed that down a little bit, it's the costs will be about $120,000. I'm going to see if I can whittle that down a little bit more and really focus on truly just what we need. But that is the vast majority of that effort is truly what we need to support the ViewWorks and to support BSNA implementations. The keyless entry for city buildings is. We're going to be issuing an RFP probably in March for that project, and what we're going to be doing is replacing the keypads on all 3 of the main city buildings with proximity card readers. So that there'll be no more actual key code to print it, to punch in when you try to access the building when it's locked. You'd have an ID card, because these cards are just little white cards you can print the IDs on. And so you'd have an ID card that you just put up the proximity sensor and it'll unlock the door. As part of that, though, I'm going to give a council a heads up. We're going to be going through a process where we're going to be considering more than just price. So we're going to have a request for proposals, and we're going to be totally upfront and transparent that price is important, but it's not the only thing. There's some frustrations with the current system that go beyond just the aging hardware. The software is not very user-friendly. The support agreement isn't great, and the support that we get out of it isn't great. So we're going to be considering price will be a factor for sure, but then we want to get references for the other communities they work in. We want to see their software and see how user-friendly it is. And then I'm going to be asking for copies of a template of their support agreements so we can see what's involved in that and what services they provide, and then get some idea of what that might cost going forward too. So we may pick the lowest price vendor, but it could be anywhere in between lowest to highest price, just depending on all the factors the staff's going to be considering, and we'll make a recommendation for council to consider an award of that contract. There's a decision package this year for the purchase of a small articulated loader. That's going to be a piece of equipment that will replace one of our skidsters in our fleet, so we're not increasing the size of the fleet. This is going to be, we'll trade in one of the skidsters for this piece of equipment. And just to give you an idea, price-wise, this piece of equipment with its attachments should cost about $60,000, whereas skidster with its attachments costs about $100,000. They have about the same useful life. There'll be some nominal savings then of a few $1,000s a year on average to the CMRP, which is good. It's not a huge savings. It's not going to fill the gap that we have in there, but it's moving the right direction instead of adding a new piece of equipment to our increasing our fleet size. And this loader is going to help with snow removal on sidewalks around the police department and around City Hall. There's a broom attachment to it that should more completely remove snow from the sidewalks. It should save wear and tear on staff that has to manually shovel or get out there and salt. It should save on the amount of salt that we put down there, and it's also going to be faster for removal too. And the machine can be used year round. There's other attachments. There's this grapple where you can use it to help with other staff things like water main breaks and that, or if you're removing a tree and cutting it up, they can pick up and grab logs and carry them efficiently, which also again saves wear and tear on staff. Finally, the biggest one on this particular page is the Cerny Park Improvement Project, and this is a decision package as well. You may recall seeing in the weekly report in the last couple of weeks that the city is going to receive a $600,000 OSLAD grant, which I think is Open Space Land Acquisition and Development Grant from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. You may recall when Hitchcock Design Group came in, was it probably last spring or summer, or probably last summer, came and presented on that grant application. It's an overall $1.2 million project. The OSLAD grant will fund 50% of the project up to $600,000. So if the cost ends up being more than $1.2 million, they'll provide $600,000 in funds. If it's less than $1.2 million, they'll provide 50% of the project costs. Concurrently, we're working with the Park District staff to work toward developing an IGA that would transfer the Cerny Park from the city to the Park District. We're at the stage now where staff is on the same page as far as what we think is important. Our next step is going to be to set up a city park task force meeting with elected officials, 2 elected officials from each group, to talk through that and get feedback from those elected officials. And then the step after that would be I'd come here and present the kind of terms to city council, and Tim would go to the Park District Board and present the terms to them, and hopefully, for your consideration, hopefully if both bodies are in favor of that, we would move forward with the city attorney drafting an IGA between the 2 agencies. And I optimistically like to think this could happen really fast. We're just now with the Harding Field transfer, which is about the easiest one you're ever going to have. Just now, the city attorney is working through the recording process and that with DuPage County to wrap that up. There's processes in place and it just takes time. So I think getting to the agreement portion might be relatively easy, but getting some of the other pieces to the actual physical transfer of the park is going to take a little bit of time. But I think it's important that we work toward transferring the park from the city to the Park District. It'll be brand new playground equipment, brand new pickleball courts, a renovated shelter building, and a few other improvements that will give them effectively a new park where they don't have to invest a lot of money in it up front. And this would be our best opportunity to do that, I think. And then they have some goals in the future to apply for another round of OSLAD grant funding, where the Park District would apply for some additional improvements of the park too. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Phil. Comments or questions from the alderman? Alderman Widener.
Yeah, regarding the land acquisitions that you were talking about, were letters sent regarding both bridge area acquisitions and the trail area acquisitions?
Yeah, the letters.
They're both are sent out?
Depending on the property, some properties there would only be easements necessary for the trail, but the properties that are down closer to the bridge would require easements for both the bridge and for the trail. So the letters included everything. They didn't separate it out. I mean, it's detailed in there what the costs, what the values of the easements are, but it's not. There weren't separate letters for bridge and separate letters for the trail.
So it'd be all the property owners, basically, that are east of 59 and Mack Road to Blackwell that have been sent letters?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate the update and everything, and I don't think what this, in addition to all these projects and everything like that, I can't overlook all the routine efforts that Public Works Department delivers every day, the snow plowing, the landscape details and parks management, and all the event support and everything like that they provide all the time. And I think the city gets the most comments about their citizens' appreciation of the daily public works efforts that the city accomplishes. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a great staff.
Mayor Brummel?
I would just echo what Alderman Widener said. My experience over the years has been our staff is always professional, friendly, helpful, and respectful to the citizens, and that's very much appreciated. I hear it all the time. I've never heard a negative comment about our hardworking people, so wanted to pass that along. Just a question, too. I know some of the older communities in northern Illinois have problems with lead pipes for water. As far as I know, we have no such problem like that in Warrenville, being that we're somewhat of a younger community and we don't have those old-style pipes. So there's none in our public water system, and probably very, very little in private homes, too.
Yeah, I can't speak for the actual private homes themselves, but the belief in Public Works at this point is we have no lead services. Zach is actually working on a lead service line inventory, which is just it's really a service line inventory to report on the copper services, and we've got some PVC services too, to document all the materials for the different services and the ages and that kind of stuff. So he's working on that right now. I can't remember what the due date is with the IEPA to provide that, but to my understanding is that we don't have any lead services.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Lockett.
Yeah, I'm going to echo the mayor, Alderman Weidner, and I think I've said it before, we're just so lucky that we have the capability and the people that we do have to do something as far as just trimming trees, fixing water main breaks, putting in sewer mains, being able to do all that construction, actually, in my belief, saves the city quite a lot of money. And the acronyms are getting crazy. They are getting crazy. But I'll get there with all of it. I did want to ask just one clarification. With us transferring Cerny Park, that doesn't hurt their chances of getting an OSLAD grant, correct? They would basically have the same chance of getting it as we would if we were to keep the
Correct.
park.
And from what I understand from Hitchcock is there's some, with multiple phases of projects, so if you get an OSLAD grant for the first phase, you're more, in their experience, more likely to get one for the second phase. So that Park District application for an OSLAD grant would be basically a second phase
Okay.
of that project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. City Administrator White.
Thank you. Just want to point out, in your packets behind each of the presentations for Finance and Public Works is also their department work plans. Many of the larger projects that require staff from multiple departments is also included in the citywide work plan, but these are specific to each department, so there are differences between these work plans and the citywide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I do have one thing to add about Christina, just reminded me. After Alma prepared her citywide work plan, or the citywide work plan for the packet, I made a change to one of the projects that's not reflected in the citywide work plan, the Route 59 project. I talked with Christine Hocking about it, and we're going to bump that down to a Tier 2 from a Tier 1 because we're really not doing anything with it this year other than applying for funding. So we moved that down. Just going to tell Alma tomorrow morning so she can update the citywide work plan.
Director Dahlstrom.
I don't want to horn in on Phil's presentation here, but I just want to mention something that I know he meant to mention. With that Cerny Park project, with half of that money being an OSLAD grant, the other half of the money will actually be from park developer donations, which is the city share of that money. So there won't be any taxpayer dollars in that way spent on the project. It'll all be between the grant and the developer donations. I know he meant to point that out, so.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Comments or questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Phil. On to number 3, consideration of bid letting and construction engineering for 2024 construction projects prior to approval of the FY 2025 budget. Director Kugler, again.
Thank you. This should be a fairly short item. It's something we do every year. Staff is currently preparing the bid documents for the 2024 road program and the Batavia Road resurfacing project. And we're looking to have council give us authorization to move forward with the advertising for bids for those projects before the FY25 budget's formally approved. And our experience, the earlier we can get these projects out to bid, the more favorable the bid prices are going to be before contractors start filling up their dockets with other projects. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Alderman Widener?
Are we adding curb and gutter where there has not been curb and gutter in the past? Or is it all replacement?
It depends. Mostly it's just replacement. For the streets that don't have curb and gutter, typically we're doing what I call more of an enhanced resurfacing, where we start to patch along the edges of the road to build up, to beef up that cross-section, but typically we're not adding curb and gutter where there isn't curb and gutter now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, no other comments or questions? Alderman Lockett?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the city council authorize staff to advertise for bids for the 2024 construction projects outlined in Public Works Director Kukler's February 7th, 2024 memorandum prior to formal approval of the fiscal year 2025 budget.
Second. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. We'll go with Alderman Wilkie on that one, on the second. There's a motion by Alderman Lockett and a second by Alderman Wilkie. All those in favor? Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Number 4, consideration of revocable right-of-way covenant agreement for 27W 680 Warrenville Road. Let me see, we have Joe. Jack. Okay. It's all yours, take it
Thank
away.
you, Chairman. Yes, tonight I'm here to present a revocable right-of-way covenant agreement request for 27W 680 Warrenville Road. This property is at the corner of Warrenville Road and Elizabeth Avenue. A little background history on this project. A citation was issued for work without a permit for a brick paver walkway that you see here in these pictures.
Hey, Jack, I'm sorry, can you talk closer to the microphone?
Yes.
Thank you.
A citation was issued for work without a permit for this brick paver walkway connecting the front door to the driveway. Subsequent to that citation being issued, Mr. Adam Manala, here tonight, the homeowner, applied for the building permit. Upon review, staff noticed it was in the public right-of-way, and brick paver walkways are not a permitted encroachment into public right-of-way without city council approval. The scope of work includes 2 rows of 16-inch square brick pavers framed by a 6-inch wide wood frame. The pictures you see here tonight are not the end product. This was a stop work order after the citation was issued. So should this be approved by the city council, what you would see is not exactly the same as what's in these pictures. Additionally, the revocable right-of-way covenant agreement would include a couple steps. These bottom 2 steps encroach into the right-of-way. You might be asking yourself why the front of the house is so close to the right-of-way. I believe this is a non-conforming structure. It was built 17 feet from the right-of-way line. All other properties within R5 have to be built at least 30 feet from the property line. So that gives a little insight into this kind of special circumstance. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Davalos?
Thank you. So the whole thing is in the right-of-way, I see, including the 2 steps. And so who's in charge of maintaining that area? Is that the homeowner?
Correct.
Does our vote tonight transfer that to them?
I believe the vote tonight would be to make a motion to recommend to the city council. However, the right-of-way agreement does require that the homeowner is liable for all maintenance of the improvements.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Kruckenberg?
Is there any other concrete walk all along Elizabeth that this would connect up to in any way, shape, or form? As you go north?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
However, I would like to point out, this is an older survey done in the 90s. There was a concrete walk here. There wasn't a permit ever issued for this walk, nor a revocable right-of-way covenant agreement issued. However, this walk did exist prior, and I believe after conversations with Mr. Anala, they just took the pavement off and left the gravel there. But getting to your point, I don't believe there are any walkways north of this on Elizabeth.
Okay. Are you done? Okay. Well, I just have a comment. One of the pictures that you showed on the, with the stairs, and I know you said that this is not complete yet.
Yeah.
This was the stop order. I just want to make sure that this area that looks like it's gravel is going to be filled in. Obviously, this is a safety issue, people walking. It's a kind of like a trip hazard at this point. I don't know if that's going to be done. I kind of. Sir, you would have to come up to the podium to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, if you see the picture for this back area here, there will be, the same stone pavers will be cut to fit and fill those areas. So it's just incomplete work at this point in time, but it will be filled in.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Brummel?
If I understand a revocable right-of-way permit, part of that process is that the city has to do work in that right-of-way, and this has to be moved or destroyed. The understanding is that's at the owner's expense, that's not at the city expense, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Widener?
Is the city undergo any liability or any requirement for American with Disabilities Act, since this is in the right-of-way? And does this feature affect the drainage in the area at all?
Regarding the accessibility question, I believe Director Kukler, you have an answer to that?
This is a private improvement in the public right of way. It's not a public sidewalk that's owned and maintained by the city. So there's, as far as we could verify with the city attorney, but I don't think there's any liability for the ADA because it's not a city improvement.
But I'm just wondering, any kind of new construction that would appear, be in the public right-of-way seems like it would need to meet the intentions of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Doesn't new construction require attention to those kind of details?
As far as private improvements, I don't know. It's a question for the building department. But it's not a public improvement. It's not a city-owned property. We're allowing, what this revocable right-of-way agreement is doing is allowing a private improvement to be in the public right-of-way. It's not a public sidewalk.
Okay.
Treasurer Goodman?
There's a time to complete on item 3, which is left blank. Is that on purpose?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time, please?
Item 3 of the agreement, there's a blank line there for time to complete. And on my copy anyway, it's blank.
Correct.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah, since I'd have to discuss with Director Kukler what the standard is for these agreements. It was left blank because the majority of the work is already completed. However, a building permit will be required, inspections will be required as well.
It'll depend a little bit on, it depends a little bit on when the agreement would be approved by city council. And it being winter time, that's going to have to be taken into consideration as to when the work will actually happen. So left it blank until we knew for sure when it was going to be acceptable to council.
So we would have to be doing the approval first, and then you would have to get the permits, and then we can figure that timing out from there. Is that it?
Yes, and ultimately, I'm the one representative of the city who will sign off on this agreement. We have the agreement signed off by the resident, and once council, assuming council approves this, then the next step would be to get the permits and for me to sign off on the agreement, and we can talk with the homeowner and what the plans are for getting this done. But this type of work's gonna have to be done when it gets warmer outside.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Alderman Lockett?
I'd like to make a motion that City Council approve a revocable right-of-way covenant agreement for a brick paver walk at 27 West 680 Warrenville Road.
Second. We have a motion by Alderman Lockett and a second by Alderman Wilkie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Number 5, information update of Briggs and Estes private well monitoring. Director Kukler.
Thank you. As I referred to just briefly in my budget presentation, city and engineering enterprises staff worked together to measure the water levels in the nearby private residential wells within the vicinity of well 13 before, during, and after the test pumping of well 13 in the fall. The EEI prepared a report summarizing the data, which is posted on the city website. Utility division staff delivered letters with this information and the location of the document on the city website to the residents out in Briggs and Estes. The conclusion ultimately is that the private residential wells in the vicinity of well 13 will not be negatively impacted by the normal operation of well 13. Moving forward until the well is actually online, which is going to be, and won't happen until after the water treatment building is actually constructed. So we're going to measure the water levels in the 12 private residential wells that we actually have access agreements for. We'll measure those water levels quarterly over the course of the next year, year and a half. And then once that well goes online, we're committed to the residents during the zoning process that we would measure or monitor those wells for 2 years going forward after the well goes online. So it'll be 2 years after that date. Initially, at least, we're going to be measuring monthly those water levels, and if they're really consistent, if there's no change, then might go to bi-monthly. But our commitment is to keep an eye on those, make sure we're not negatively impacting those residents and their wells. With that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions on this subject.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Seeing none, I need a motion. Oh, no, this is an information only. I'm sorry. Okay, I guess there are no questions. Number 6, consideration of intergovernmental agreement with DuPage County. Director Kukla.
Thank you. I'm pinch hitting for Christine because she is feeling under the weather right now. So there's a draft IGA with DuPage County in the agenda backup materials. This is related to the OTRS, Old Town Redevelopment Site Number 2 project. As part of that project, there's going to be some filling in the floodplain. When you fill in the floodplain, you have to compensate by excavating elsewhere in the floodplain to balance out the fill that you're putting in. And then there's also some trees that the county was going to plant or was obligated to plant during the River Remeander project that they never planted along the east side of hotels. So this agreement outlines the requirements and terms for the city having a contract to plant those trees. The county will pay up to, I believe it is $25,000 or something like that for the planting of those trees and the vegetation. And this will also document the use of the city using a certain amount of the compensatory storage that was created during the River Remeander project for the OTRS number 2 project. So this memorializes that. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that I can answer. I think Christine is also on by go-to meeting if there's a question that I can't answer.
Thank you. Comments, questions regarding the intergovernmental agreement? Mayor Brummel?
I have no question, just a comment. When I showed up for a Stormwater Committee meeting last Tuesday at the county and said hello to Sarah Hunn, who's in charge over there, the first thing she said was what a pleasure it was to work with Christine over the issues. I wanted to pass that along.
Yep, Christine's great. She's a good representative of the city.
Okay. Alderman Kruckenberg?
I'd like to make a motion that City Council approve an intergovernmental agreement with DuPage County for the OTRS number 2 project.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Kruckenberg and a second by Alderman Augustinovich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 7, informational presentation of the tree grant and associated requirements. Director Kukler.
Thank you again. City has been approved for a $7,732 grant for tree planting, the Parkway tree planting. So that grant will fund approximately half of our, well, it will fund half of our planned fall 2024 Parkway tree planting project. This will increase the program slightly from 100 trees to 112 trees so we can maximize the grant dollars that we're approved for. There are various requirements associated with the grant funding, most of which our normal tree planting complies with and just our normal practices. There's one requirement that I'd like to call attention to for City Council, though. It requires the city adopt a tree preservation ordinance before the city would be reimbursed for the grant funds. It has to be done before July 2025. Staff intends to work with the city attorney to prepare a draft of tree preservation ordinance based on a bronze level template that's available from the Chicago Region Trees Initiative. They have a bronze, silver, and gold. We figured starting at the lowest level with our first foray into a tree preservation ordinance was the right move. And then after staff works with the city attorney, my plan then is to take that draft and share it with the Environmental Advisory Commission to solicit feedback from them so we can incorporate their feedback into the ordinance as well. And once we do have a final version of that, then we bring it forward with the recommendation for City Council consideration. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. So we are allowed to choose the species of trees that we plant that fit our situation, our area, our plans, or are there stipulations about which trees?
So in the grant application, I provided the list of tree species that we planted last year, and they were acceptable as part of that grant application.
Okay, and I probably know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So we already have funded 100 trees, and so this will replace that. We can't put the 100, we're trying to save money. Is that what's going on? We can't put the 112, or is it just labor on top of the 100? Or spread it out, or are there probably stipulations in the grant?
No, so I talked about this with City Administrator White, and given the council discussion in November about trying to stick to the 100 trees per year that we committed to, we thought it was best to have this replace or partially fund those 100 trees. Again, in order to use as much of that grant funding as possible, I'm going to maximize that. So I'm not going to stick to the 100. If I can get 112, that's great, but not to double the program at this point. I'd actually applied for more money. It was like $19,000 that they had enough response to the grant that I think they were spreading out the money more. So if we had received the $19,000, my recommendation would have been to accept that, but to spread that over a fall planting and then a spring planting. So it's 2 different years. It would have funded half of the 2 years in a row of planting 100 trees.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Alderman Widener.
Yeah, congratulations on obtaining the grant. The way I understood the program was that we were going to commit 100 trees per year planting in areas that had reduced canopy. And the way I understood this grant was that it was a grant given to areas and communities that had been affected by the emerald ash borer. And I think over a 5-year period, the city took down about 660 trees due to the emerald ash borer infestation. And it just seems odd that we're kind of, I don't know how we're dividing the numbers but I would think that the 100 trees would be a given, and then we would work toward replacing the 660 emerald ash borer trees and increase the amount of trees we're planting by more than 12 because of the devastation that occurred over this 5 years.
So my understanding, and it's before my time in Public Works, is that after removing those trees, the city replaced most of those trees, or the ash trees that were taken down. They definitely did not do a one-to-one, because there were people that didn't want another tree in their parkway to replace the ash tree. But my understanding is most people did accept those trees. They got planted for free. There was no charge to the residents. the area that was probably most devastated by the emerald ash borer, I think, was Summer Lakes. And it so happens that our program is in Summer Lakes, so we're actually working in the area where with reduced canopy from the emerald ash borer anyway, so it's a natural fit to have it do that. Again, the council literally just had this discussion in November, and the decision was to continue on with 100 trees for this coming year. So Administrator White and I talked about that, and that was taking that direction into account. That's how we proceeded.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Lockett?
I'm not sure if you could answer this question or not, but do you think that those grants are going to be something that could potentially, we could qualify for every year moving forward?
Potentially. One of the interesting things about the tree grants that I've seen is that somehow or other Warrenville as a whole, not just areas of Warrenville, qualifies as a disadvantaged community. So it increases our eligibility for the tree grants. It's not that way with all grants, but the tree ones, it seems like for whatever criteria they use, they've qualified Warrenville as a disadvantaged community, so we do qualify in that way for grants. It seems to be, this one was focused on EAB, but it was the year before the same grant existed with a different focus. So it seems like as long as they have the funding, they're going to have these grants, and I've seen other ones seems like every year for the foreseeable future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, this is a information only. I'm sorry, question, Alderman Kuchenberg?
When we were talking about sticking to 100 trees, I guess I was under the impression that we didn't want to, we had talked about adding more money to the budget for more trees to kind of bump that up a little bit. So is it because of budget? Is it because of labor that we're not doing? I guess I'm disappointed that we're only doing 12 additional trees after getting a grant to do more.
So the discussion when we talked in November was it's not money. I mean, we don't, in the big scheme of the city's budget, we don't devote that, there's not that much of a cost for what we spend on trees. I mean, it really isn't. It's more staff time. I mean, we'd have, the first year went really efficiently. We purposely picked Continental Drive between Route 59 and Johnson School because it was a contained area. There weren't a lot of residents to deal with in that area. These are parkways that are generally along association property. So it was really efficiently done. This year is going to be our first year of actually reaching out to residents, and staff is working with Paula, the communications coordinator, and Cassandra's helping out, trying to develop communications to get out and work and actually talk to the residents and get the word out. We don't know how that's going to go, and that was the discussion in November, is let this program that is brand new, that we literally just in October planted the first 100 trees. Let's get a handle on how it works to plant 100 trees at a time and not jump to 200 trees, was the discussion that I recall from November.
Thanks for the clarification.
Alderman Widener?
Yeah, we keep calling this a brand-new program, but I think it's a project that every public works department and every community is involved with a city forestry program and things like that. And I guess calling it a new program when we have history going back to, 2012 of planting and pruning, 600 or 700 trees a year, seems like, that we should be talking about a continuation of an existing program and not a new program. And I may be splitting hairs here, but I just think that it is, a public works department project that's an annual effort. So
Sure. What's new about it is we at no time in my time with the city did we go out and purposely plant 100 trees per year and intentionally do that. I mean, it may be that, again, when the EAB was going through, they planted a bunch of trees, hundreds of trees to replace the EAB trees, but there was not, I've been here 14 years, I don't remember there being a consistent effort to plant 100 new trees a year that aren't just replacing trees that were cut down. So it's new in that respect, you're right. There's been some sort of a program for years, but December 2022, staff made a recommendation and council approved it to change the program.
According to reports that I saw in other city notes, there were 111 trees planted in 2020 and 350 pruned. In 2013, there's 127 planted. And I don't think there's any record on how many were pruned. And in 2012, there was 122 planted with 500 pruned. So I think the city does have a past history of, punching past the 100 tree or 112 tree mark, and it has been an existing program with some history to it. So those
Jamie, do you want to shed some light on those numbers?
Those would have all been EAB replacements. When we cut ash trees down back then, we were handing notices out to the residents, and any resident that would desire a tree, we would plant one. So that at that time, I recall it being the 120 year tree a year at that point. We had a lot of time dedicated to that program because we'd just been devastated by the emerald ash borer.
Anything else, Alderman Weidner?
I don't have any other questions.
Alderman Davalos?
Yeah, I just want to confirm something. I heard that part of this program, the group that was doing this had designed not like a door hanger, but something like that explained the care of the tree that would be planted in this residence yard. And that when you presented the tree plan last December, I think I heard that one of the challenges was just have a lot of staff time in explaining to residents what they were expected to do, because they got the choice, and did they want to do this, could they do this maintenance? So I was sort of thinking of the work that the EAC might have to do, this might already be done. Is that true that there is that, does that come with the trees, this education piece that can be given to residents? I think it was both in English and Spanish.
So Alderman Weidner shared a copy of that with me recently, and it was I think it was a Morton Arboretum or Chicago CRTI, one of the two they're related, but had developed that door hanger. I'm not sure if there's the ability to get more of those from them, or if we would have to pay to produce them. But it was definitely beneficial. I mean, again, being in
Thanks.
English and Spanish, and having some care instructions on there for people as far as the parkway trees is important. And really what Jamie and Jeff Simmons were recently at a conference where they learned about a new, I think it's called a tree diaper is the product, and it's, instead of having a gator bag that's up on the trunk of the tree, it's something that lays underneath the mulch around the tree. It can get partially refilled by rain when it rains, and then it's a bag that if the resident had to fill it up, there's a certain amount of water to fill up in that, and we're looking at installing those with every tree going forward, so it's very obvious, like you can feel when it's empty, and then when you fill it up, there's a limit to how much you fill it up.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. No other comments or questions? That was again, information only. Thank you, Director Kugler. Number 8, consideration of the city entry sign replacement. Director Kugler.
Thank you. This is my last presentation item.
Okay.
So you may have noticed recently that the existing wooden city entry sign that is on southbound, or was on southbound Route 59 near Maple Hill subdivision is no longer there. A car went off the road and destroyed it sometime during the winter recently. The intent all along has been to eventually replace all those old wooden signs with a newer design, the masonry signs you've seen on Butterfield Road and on Winfield Road, which are the entry signs for the city that were installed as part of this streetscape project. 3 of the 4 wooden sign locations are within 10 feet of the road, and they're on either an IDOT right-of-way, a state right-of-way, or a county right-of-way. And there's no way that either one of those agencies is going to allow us. They've got pretty severe restrictions on how close you can be with structures like that. I mean, a wooden sign will get obliterated by a car, but you hit one of those masonry structures and the car is probably not going to go through it. So there's more of a danger to the driver that goes off the road there. And if you notice a couple of locations where we do have those masonry signs, Butterfield Road right away is extremely wide. If you look at by Briggs Avenue, I forget how many feet it is off the roadway across a ditch, and that was an IDOT requirement. The sign that's on Winfield Road is on ComEd property. We have an easement from ComEd to put it up there. There wasn't room in the right of way. We had to work with ComEd to get that easement to put the sign there. For these locations that are closer to the roadway, we've got a couple of options potentially. We could look at getting easements from private property owners to put the sign on private property if something was available and if you had a cooperative property owner, and that may cost money to acquire those. But that would be the way I would see in these locations. You could potentially get a masonry sign. Another option would be the city of West Chicago has signs that look like masonry signs. There's one on 59, I think, that actually recently got hit that's just north of Warrenville. But I think it's a hollow, like wooden box with like kind of a fascia of like stone looking around the outside of it. So it looks like a structure, but it's something that IDOT permitted to be relatively close to their roadway. So ultimately, staff, I think if the sign is still standing and if paint's fading or if it's just a little bit damaged, I think we're recommending continuing to maintain those signs as they're still standing. When a sign gets completely destroyed, our recommendation would be to start looking into replacing those signs with something that's more in line with what the design of those masonry signs. And it may be a little bit different design. It may not be masonry, but something that's in keeping with the same character and the design elements of those signs. I'm looking for direction to add this as a Tier 3 item in the fiscal year 25 Public Works Department work plan to start investigating this and seeing what the options might be. And I envision that would include, reaching out to West Chicago and their Public Works Department to see what the actual design of their sign is, what the permit process was with IDOT from their experience, reaching out to IDOT to find out what the permit process is and whether they'd even consider those signs within 10 feet of a roadway, and also reaching out to DuPage County DOT for their permitting folks to see if they would allow those within 10 feet of the roadway. And I don't know that we'll have time to get to this year, but it's something I want to have on the work plan. In the event that we do have time and available to do this later in the fiscal year, I'd like to start that investigation, and then this time next year be looking at potentially, hiring a consultant to help us design something and get it permitted and maybe construct it in fiscal year 26. But I'm not looking for construction in fiscal year 25. I don't believe we have the capacity to take that on. So with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Okay. Treasurer Goodman?
Was the driver identified and did they have insurance?
I have no idea. I'd have to ask the police department. Okay. Alma says they were not.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Widener.
I like the idea of, having something, I think, maybe less of a structure than what the city has set up with the entry signs and the pillar, but yet follows the same character or theme that the city's established, like maybe establishing a type A and a type B sign. And I think there's, as you know, there's CMRP implications to this. So if we can, get something that would be at a reduced cost from the full-fledged large entry signs, I think that would be, I guess, my thoughts on the matter, although I'm open to any other suggestions that people might have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think part of the intent of this item is that we can figure out what parameters we're working within, what will IDOT allow, what will DOT allow. If they aren't going to allow us to be that close to the road regardless, we're going to have to look for alternatives to maybe changing the location or then possibly seeking private property. But I do like the idea of the CMRP perspective to reduce the costs associated with these.
And if it happened once, especially along a busy highway like Route 59, you might be able to predict that it's going to happen, a second time, and to have something less expensive and easier to replace and probably less of a hazard to whoever plows into it too would be, I think, all good efforts to look at as we move forward.
Thank you. Alderman Lockett?
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to include the development of options for the new city entry sign on southbound Route 59 near Maple Hill as a Tier 3 item on the Public Works Department fiscal year 2025 work plan.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Lockett and a second by Alderman Wilkie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Number 9, discussion of the FY 2025 citywide work plan. This would be Assistant City Administrator Alma Morgan.
Thank you. Once again this evening, the draft fiscal year 25 citywide work plan is included in your agenda backup materials. As a reminder, it is a listing of the large multi-departmental initiatives and corresponding prioritization that city staff discussed with all the projects that we're working on together for next fiscal year. This item will be presented in all the committee of the whole meetings up until the March 18th budget workshop meeting. And this is also an opportunity for the committee to give us feedback and make changes if you would like us to make any changes to the priorities listed. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? I guess not.
Okay.
Okay. So, I guess no other questions for comments for,
Other than the
Olin?
one item that Phil requested that we move down to fiscal year, I'm sorry, to tier 2. I will make that revision
that
based on his
correction.
comments from earlier this evening.
great, thank you. Okay, thank you, Alma.
Thank you.
Number 10, review and file the Public Works Department FY 2024 work program and decision package status report. This is an information only, but does anyone have any questions regarding this at the moment? No? Okay. We have nothing under miscellaneous, and we have nothing else going on, so all I need is a motion. Alderman Lockett?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Lockett and a second by Alderman Augustinovich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.